What's up, wrestling fans? We are live right after Backlash 2020. I'm Doug,
And I'm Kevin.
and here we go with our hot takes of Backlash. So let me just start off by saying, last week when we had reviewed the NXT In Your House takeover, I had a very rough week at the day job and was really tired. And a couple of times I fell asleep during the matches from last week's pay per view, not because of the quality of the matches, but because of the quality of rest I'd been getting. And a lot of the time, Kevin was mentioning things that I had no idea what he was talking about because I'd apparently fallen asleep during those points. And I'm going to say up until like the last couple of matches on this pay per view, I wish I would have fallen asleep again. But that's just my hot take on it. So
I want to disagree with you already. I thought, well, okay, we're not going to spoil things. There was good, there was bad to me in this, and there was just outright bizarre, and that could just be the main event itself. So
yep.
let's get to it. Let's start. Folks, chime in. If you've watched, agree with us, disagree with us, point out things that we might be missing. Let us know where we're getting it wrong. And we're going to let you know if you didn't see what it is you should check out, starting with, wanted to go with the pre-show match?
Let's go with the pre-show match. And I think this kind of came out. I expected maybe this is foolish for me, but I expect title matches on the actual card. I should know better at this point. But, with Cruz versus Andrade coming in on the pre-show there, and I almost missed it because I wasn't watching the pre-show. I just happened to jump into the pre-show about halfway through. I think it actually came up on a social media feed that, it was going to happen. So that's how I got into it just in time to see it.
I happened to turn over at 6:30 just to, turn something on while I was getting ready to eat and saw that match was starting. But I think it goes to show a problem that WWE has consistently had, particularly with like your tag team titles, your secondary titles, your U.S. title, your Intercontinental title. To me, not having that on the main pay-per-view defines down the championship. So it lets you, the viewer, know that WWE doesn't see the U.S. championship as anything more than a filler match to be used on the pre-show. That said, usually the pre-show is full of filler matches, and in this instance, in my opinion, this match was better than a lot of the things that ended up on the actual pay-per-view.
I do totally agree with that because I mean these two guys can bring it anytime they're in a ring together. So I think they definitely brought it, and it was definitely better than Backlash. I'm getting ahead of myself. But it was definitely one of the better matches on the card for the pre-show, even
Cruz beat Andrade. We should mention the winner and say that in my mind, 5 more minutes to that match, put it on the main card, and it would have been one of the highlights of the night. As it was, it's one of the better pre-show matches that you can see. So even if you don't get the WWE Network, you should be able to catch the pre-show on their YouTube channel. So at least check that match out at the very least.
Yeah, that is a good one of the better matches of the night, definitely. Definitely.
Let's start then with the actual pay-per-view itself, Doug. The first match of that.
What do we have? We had Bliss Cross, Bailey Banks, and the Iconics for the women tag titles. And let me just say, right off the bat, I am not a fan of these like multi-team matches. Things get a little crazy. They get a little convoluted, and otherwise, if they don't get into the chaos, there's that predictable chaos because it's almost that very scripted chaos that at some point there's going to be a big breakdown. Multiple people are going to be laying outside of the ring.
And this one also had some interesting rules to it. You typically, even in a triple threat match, you have 2 people in the ring at a time. This being a tag team match, of course, you're going to have 6 women involved, but 3 of those, 1 from each team, could be allowed in the ring at any given time. So it really sort of felt like a AAA, like lucha style match where there was just a lot going on, and so much so that it was hard to follow. That said, it was not slow. It was well paced. I like this version of Bailey better than I have any heel version. It's strange. I always liked the Bailey character. Did not like or agree with the idea to turn her heel, and she's been heel for so long. And I thought this also isn't working. I know that her and Sasha are besties in real life, and I don't know if it's just the two of them bringing something out of each other. But the promo before the match actually, to me, was the highlight of the match. It was probably the coolest and best heel Bailey that we've seen in my mind.
And not only that, I've got a note about how I really like the way it was conducted, because Banks' music hits, she goes on through Gorilla, and you get that split screen where she's out in Gorilla doing her entrance, and then you've got the the Bailey still doing her promo backstage. Yeah, I really like the way that was done. I thought that was kind of unique. I don't think we've ever seen it with a tag team before.
No, honestly, that was my favorite part of the match. Nothing wrong with the match, other than too much traffic, like you said. The champs retain, to further kick the can down the road as to when the eventual breakup will happen. But for now, I'm hoping it doesn't happen too soon, because I'm actually enjoying this part of the gimmick more than I have since they've really started with the whole Sasha Bailey tease thing. So.
And is it just me, or does WWE overuse the surprise roll up as a finish? It is like one of the most devastating moves in sports entertainment now. It's
Hey, Manigata, this is awesome from the scripted crowd. And I'm sorry, I know we've mentioned this. I think I mentioned it on last week's show, but I don't mind that you're using a fake audience. I don't mind that you're pumping enthusiasm or energy into the match artificially. You've let me know that you're doing artificially, but then when you do the chants, it I think that's maybe one step too far, because we know that's not organic. Cheer, boo. I'm even fine with a Hardy chant or something along those lines, like we hear later on in the night. But when you start making commentary on the match, you know that you're being fed. We know, as an audience, I should say, that they are being fed the same way that we know when we're listening to the commentators that their enthusiasm is also being scripted. And that just, to me, takes me one step out of what I'm supposed to be feeling when I'm watching the wrestling matches.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally agree with you.
Doug, we got urine-faced Sheamus versus Matt Hardy.
Man, let me tell you, I've not been a fan of like this whole this whole angle with Sheamus and Jeff Hardy anyway, and then this ridiculousness of the big 5-gallon bucket that Jeff Hardy fills up of his own urine and throws in Sheamus's face on SmackDown. And
if they were doing that for comedy, it'd be one thing, but they did not make any that wasn't a Street Profit style attempt at comedy when they show him come out with a 2-liter full of urine that he is supposedly just
again, this match, I was getting taken out of this whole pay-per-view again, because it seems like this match was going on too long. To me, it felt like a really long TV match, and I was thinking at this point, maybe the Performance Center is actually getting stale, because I know I'm starting to sound like a broken record, because what I did retain from when I wasn't falling asleep from last week, I kept saying, that in NXT TakeOver felt like any other Wednesday night where I can catch NXT. Nothing was bad, but it wasn't like a pay-per-view at level NXT. And this, I can't really pick anything out that was particularly bad, other than the whole angle and storyline itself. But maybe the Performance Center that's finally getting to me, and maybe some change of venue or something would do some good for the WWE. I don't know.
I like this match. I have hated the angle. I hated the way we got there. At the end of the night, I'm fine for realism in professional wrestling. In fact, I much prefer that to the cinematic nonsense that we will probably talk about a little bit later. And that we've seen on all brands and all wrestling in this. This is not just picking on any one promotion here. It's just the era that we're in. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The more realism to me, the more I tend to like the product, but that's what I just prefer. And all wrestling fans are different. This, though, at the end of the night, that's still an actual addict in the ring. And so to make light of that in any way, or to use that for a storyline, makes me uncomfortable. All that said, I hate everything about the way we got there. And because of that, I was wanting to hate on the match too. because I'm, kind of lukewarm on Sheamus overall. And, I like Jeff Hardy, but kind of more the old, the historic version of Jeff Hardy in my mind from
Yeah.
this heyday. This match to me over delivered. I maybe I just had low expectations for it and therefore was pleasantly surprised. I thought that brutal sounding knee spike that Sheamus did to Jeff on the top rope was pretty killer. Looked really good. I like the false finishes. I like the swanton with the Sheamus too close to the ropes. It did go on longer than I expected, but to me, it didn't overstay its welcome. If I had anything to quibble other than the storyline beforehand, is that the if you're going to go that route with the story, you hope that there's at least the redemption of the good guy gets the advantage in the end, and that didn't happen here, which makes me think that maybe this is not the end of this little piece of business. But as a match, as a standalone match itself, I actually enjoyed it. It was one of the ones I liked most during the evening.
So yeah, and maybe the storyline that's got us to this match tonight really helped to take me out of it. But in my notes, at one point, I've got, "My God, will this ever end?" So it definitely overstayed its welcome for me. But
I don't remember honestly, because it's been 2 weeks ago since our preview show. Which way we called this? To be honest,
I don't remember. I do not remember either. I'd have to go back and we'd have to review the tapes at this point.
And this actually may have been one that wasn't even booked yet. Now that I think about it, because
it could have been because I do not remember, and I'm not sure how I would have called it actually.
So we will say, because I don't think we've mentioned yet, that Sheamus did.
We should probably talk about the winner.
The winner of this match was Sheamus over Jeff Hardy. So I don't know that Doug and I either predicted it right or wrong, but we definitely going to be on opposite sides of whether we liked it or not. So you're going to have to watch and tell us what you think.
Yeah, we'll have to hear from you all on this one. So I think it becomes obligatory with anybody who is carrying around a Money in the Bank briefcase that they have to have the obligatory tease during every pay-per-view. So we got that from Otis. Although it seemed to be more Mandy, adding the exclamation points to the tease and beating us over the head with it in case we didn't understand what Otis was saying. So,
which is all. Sometimes that is the case. Outside of an I was more Macho Man than Otis, but anyway. But
yeah,
sometimes you could use that translator. And speaking of people that could use translators, our next match, to me, Doug, is where the pay-per-view started to fall apart. And then maybe it's just me, but Asuka was defending her championship against Nia Jax. And Asuka, we've noted on here before, you and I think not long ago, that we'll not see NXT version of Asuka again.
No, we're not seeing the Empress of Tomorrow that reigned undefeated through her entire run in NXT. We're not seeing that. I mean, we're never going to see that again.
Even though that pains me that is true, she is still a great worker and can bring it. She did not have a lot to work with in this. I don't mind Nia Jax as a character. I like her look. I kind of honestly root for her. I would like to see her, with as much time as she was off. I was hoping that she would improve some more than what she apparently has. It was her offense when she was on offense, and of course Asuka's going to work from underneath with the size differential. So the plotting offense of Nia Jax just really kind of killed any momentum for this match right from the get-go, and there wasn't a whole lot that Asuka could do really to save it. It was a very sloppy jackhammer that looked pretty dangerous that Nia Jax gave to Asuka. And then the finish itself, a double countout, is what we got in this one, folks.
I was not happy with this finish.
No,
I think really WWE, in a lot of instances, does not do themselves any favors. The way they book certain things, the way they book certain performers, certain characters, and Nia Jax, they've worked themselves into a corner with Nia. We have like story after story out there on the internet, and we can see what she's done to Kairi Sane. You've listened to Jim Cornette's podcast from I think last week or the week before when he's talking about that the last horrible bump that Kairi Sane took and how you do not do that to someone. You do not throw somebody into still steps like that. That's not the way you do that. But yeah, and I'm not defending Nia because I would have loved to have seen her excel when she came back, but WWE has booked her as this beast and this brute, and her offense should look sloppy. It shouldn't be these quickly executed moves, but man, she just looks like she works dangerous constantly, though, and I think that has a lot to do with first the way she's booked because she is this beast of the women's division, this the towering Goliath who does ragdoll everybody else in the division. But this is another match I was just out of it.
Yeah, I actually to this point have liked the pay-per-view because I liked the pre-show match. I thought the opener was fine for what it was to be an opener. To me, Sheamus and Hardy exceeded what I had for expectations. This was the match where it's just okay. This was the lull in the pay-per-view as far as it goes for me, and it continues into the next match,
Oh my
which
God,
was also pretty awful.
this was horrible from the ridiculous music video intro. Never have I been happier to see Braun Strowman come out than with Miz and Morrison doing the debut of their music video. Or I don't even know what it was. I don't even know what happened there.
So my notes is the fact that I know it's a bad match when my favorite part of the match was the Miz Morrison music video. It was so bad and intentionally meant to be bad that I actually found it funny. What I didn't find funny is the burying of the tag team division. Two guys should always beat one guy when we're talking three superstars in the equation. This was a waste of a this is one of your world titles that should always be seen as important on every pay-per-view if you're going to have it. And to me, this was a waste of a what should be a prestigious universal title match when you have basically a comedy match, and that's what this was. This was a comedy match.
That's what it was. Yeah.
And when he beat Goldberg back at WrestleMania, I was surprised. I mean,
yeah,
I was and wasn't surprised. Like, okay, yes, Goldberg's going to go away, get the title off of him. Let's see what they do with Braun. I don't mind Braun. Braun is a big guy, a solid company worker. He works that big guy style, which can work fine with the right opponents. It's just in how you book him. And for them to be keeping the belt on him, honestly, it definitely makes SmackDown look like your B show compared to Raw when you look at the world title scene, because what is the world title scene? Braun's got the belt, but who's the number one contender?
Right. Who is the number one contender? And circling back around to what you're talking about, Braun, again, a big guy, and Dave Poole brings this up where we're talking about Nia here. Nia's booked at, she's big. He does, I'm not sure about her strength either, but at least when Braun brings it, Braun can actually pick up an opponent and safely do something with them. So maybe Dave Poole's onto something there. Maybe she doesn't have the strength and conditioning that she needs to pull that off. I don't know, but Braun clearly does because he came from a strongman background, so he's one of the big guys who's out there who can work the brute style and make it look at least safe for everybody.
But how is he booked? Like what? I mean, he's your champion. You look at Raw, the show centers around Drew, who's your champion, and that's the way it should be. SmackDown, who's the show centered around? Otis lately? I mean, Otis, truly. Vince obviously loves Otis.
Right.
AJ and Daniel Bryan been tearing it up, but and Braun's just kind of there, and there's not really a lineup of contenders underneath him. So I think this match here, to me, shows one, they're not booking Braun as really a strong champion as they probably should have, and they really don't know what to do with him or where the next series of opponents lie.
Right. Yeah, they're in a tough situation because I really do think, unfortunately, I think the performance center may be getting stale, or at least it's getting stale to me. I thought it was a good idea to bring in talent, but you have talent that basically cheers like we do when we go to wrestling shows. They cheer for spots. There, you know, at least in AEW, you've got. I mean, really, I noticed that tonight. At least in AEW, you've got the heels cheering for the heels when they're in the ring, the baby faces cheering for the baby faces and reacting, you know, to heels and faces. Here, I noticed tonight people cheered for spots just like you and I do when we go to NXT show or any shows that we've gone to. They're cheering for spots and recognize because you've got an audience full of wrestlers cheering for wrestlers.
If you're going to bring that up, then I will. I'm going to do another nitpick that I don't like. The fact that they get reaction shots of the wrestler
Yes, that was
overreacting.
me
Like,
tonight. Yeah.
like I mean, just like please let them cheer, let them boo, let them even chant the wrestler's name, but don't like get them acting. And then they make them part of the pre-tapes. Like they show, the highlights to hype up the match, the hype pieces, the vignettes beforehand, and they're interspersed with all these reaction shots from wrestlers that we know that are working at the Performance Center over emoting and overreacting to. I hate that part of it. So whenever we got on to WWE please follow AEW's lead. Put your wrestlers at ringside, and then they go one step beyond just putting them at ringside, and now they're ruining that part of it.
This is why we can't have nice things, WWE. Stop it.
Stop it. Just stop it.
So anyway, Braun destroyed the tag team division again.
Yeah. So now we have no real singles division going for that championship on SmackDown, and apparently no real credible tag teams either if one man can beat them. So SmackDown's a mess right now, folks. On the brighter side, Raw and their champion has been booked well, has been booked strong, and that leads us to our next one, Doug. We got the champ and Drew McIntyre versus Bobby Lashley. And I will say this. I noticed, and maybe you can tell me if I missed it otherwise. I don't think I did. I know for a fact that, I've read several spots where Backlash was pre-taped. Almost the entire show was pre-taped. Right. During this one match is the only time I noticed it actually had a little live bug in the corner.
I missed it. Didn't notice it at all.
So I'll be curious to follow up on that, though. It'd be just an odd choice to have one match live and everything else pre-taped. It would be a very odd choice. So I'm curious to read, some notes in the upcoming days
about that because I hadn't noticed that because I thought the whole thing was done because I thought they did like a marathon, like 11-hour session, of like a week or so back, and did.
I guess there's always a chance they didn't like the way it turned out and decided to do something again or do something live. But either that was a mistake in the bug or they went live with this one match. But the match itself, I liked the sneak attack start. I liked the full Nelson, old school full Nelson. And then, honestly, this was, to me, probably the second best match of the night because you got a couple of guys here that are both giant men, brutes, hard-hitting physical guys, and they let them work a hard-hitting physical style.
Yes,
they had a lot of great counters. I love the spear attempt that Lashley tried that got turned into the Kimura by McIntyre. I didn't like. To me, it was another cheap finish. I didn't like the cheap finish where Lana got involved. If up to that point, I'm like, man, this is going to be the match that no one's going to want to follow. That knocked it down. If I was giving star ratings, that would have took a half a star off of it at least. But Lana come down at ringside, caused the distraction, and your champion Drew McIntyre was able to go over Bobby Lashley.
So this for me was was the match for me on this pay-per-view that turned my thinking around on this pay-per-view. I was like, okay, business, to quote JR, business is picking up now. I was like, okay, this one finally drew me into something. But, you and I are both old school marks from way, way back. And they telegraphed, they really did a good job, I think, telegraphing Lana's interference earlier in the show when she has her interaction with MVP. And MVP's like, hey, that's your man that told you not to come out there. He doesn't want you out there. I have nothing to do with that. And I was like, okay, she's coming out there. There's going to be shenanigans. She's going to be out there, and that's how this ends. But up until that point, I thought it was a great match. I mean, hard hitting. I mean, these guys win, and this is the Bobby Lashley that I think you and I have both been wanting to see in WWE. This is finally he's getting out. I love the sneak attack. The full Nelson is a really interesting choice for like a devastating move. It reminds me of Paul Heyman once talking about how he could get Mark Henry in a headlock over and make it like this incredibly devastating move. But that aside, yeah, I really did love this match. For me, this would have been a match of the night if I had to call it. Yeah.
That cheap finish took a little shine off it, but like you said, they did forecast it. And if it ends the whole Lana storyline, how in the world Rusev got let go and Lana? I mean, I hate to cast aspersions here, but you got a real life married couple, and the talented in-ring worker is allowed to walk away from his contract, and Lana, who, bless her heart, just is just annoying in almost every program they put her in. And despite all of her best efforts, apparently just can't pick up on the whole wrestling thing, is still around and kind of mucking up what, would be a great storyline. MVP is a great mouthpiece for Bobby Lashley. And so hopefully, I'm hoping that Lashley stays in the spotlight, and then we get another round of this, maybe without the Lana interference, and let these guys headline. The placement of this match was interesting to me too, that it was, not even next to last, but that, there was still 2 more matches to go.
Yeah, and just as a side note, since we are coming down hard on WWE and their ringside talent audience, there is absolutely no need for the paid WWE talent at ringside to be chanting "Fight Forever." Although it was an excellent match, again, my favorite of the night, but that's one of those things that took me out a little bit, but I could forgive it because I thought this match was just that good.
And speaking of things that are the opposite of just that good.
Oh my! I think
I don't even know. At first, I thought, okay, it's not even a match. We found out afterwards that because of all the shenanigans that happened here between the Street Profits. Okay, if you didn't watch, the Street Profits were supposed to be defending their titles against the Viking Raiders. I have been very, I think, clear in the last few weeks when we've reviewed wrestling that this storyline is one I have not liked, because the vignettes have been so ridiculous that I just get annoyed. This was one of those vignettes stretched out to the most extreme, not just lengths, but just the extreme. It was the cinematic wrestling thing at its worst. And I know that you're talking about the Performance Center. I know that here lately, every time one of these cinematic, actually from the get-go in the Boneyard, I was a little less high on that than some people were, even though I was okay with it. But just the more this goes on, I know it's the era that we're in, that we're going to see more of this stuff, but it has definitely overstayed its welcome to me. And there's just so many places to go with it before you just lose all touches of reality. The only part I liked, I guess, if I should say, and maybe you were going to say the same thing, Tozawa and the Motorcycle Ninjas. I don't know that I can explain where they came from or why they were involved, but that did entertain me.
So let me say this. Ninjas showing up on motorcycles should elevate the level of anything that I am personally watching. Yeah, that it is the exact opposite in this ridiculousness. Yeah, I was making note, and it's oddly enough, the most of my notes for tonight's pay-per-view are about this, and we can't call it a match because the match never actually took place. But it was cinematic comedy, silliness, and brawling to start with, and then it just went to some absurd, just so bad, but it never circled back around to so bad it was good. There was a beautiful, beautiful spot though with Angela Dawkins taking Ivar through a glass door there at the Performance Center. Great spot. It looked great, but then it just picked right back up to the comedic silliness. I've got a note in here. Please let Bianca show up sometime and stop all this nonsense.
Yeah, all 4 guys deserve better. I mean, all 4
exactly.
of these guys are talented. If they would have had a straight up match, I would have been. I mean, all the silliness that happened on TV, I would have forgiven it if it led to a match on the pay-per-view that delivered the way these 4 men can deliver. Instead, they gave us another vignette. And this one was the worst of the bunch, by far the worst of the bunch. Doug, we didn't even get into the trash monster, I guess.
Okay. You're forgiven because you're not a Star Wars fan, but not even a Dianaga in the trash compactor reference could save this match. Again, not a match, but the trash compactor monster from A New Hope, could not save it, or at least what it was supposed to be. Could save this.
I didn't even get it. I didn't get the reference. I didn't.
Not the Mjolnir turkey leg that Ivar summons to him himself. And
I mean, there were some things that we can sit back and laugh on thinking about it, but if you're trying to watch it on a whole and take it for like the presentation that it was meant to be, you just can't. You just can't get through it.
You're right. Yeah, I almost texted you that these four men deserve better. I mean, they are working with what they've got, and hey, they're on TV, and good for them. But
and David makes a great point here too, Doug. This is the kind of stuff that
yes,
this is why we have the revival on AEW being Arn and Tully instead of the revival that was on Raw doing this kind of stuff. They were very much put in this same situation where, what was the one they did with the Usos where they ended up, something wrong with his butt or something. I mean, just Vince McMahon, 12-year-old humor.
Yeah. And I could just see us getting more and more of this now that Heyman is gone, and Bruce Pritchard will be the executive creative director over both Raw and SmackDown. We're this is coming to Raw soon. This garbage like this is going to be all over Raw, all over Smack. It's going to be everywhere. I'm just fearful of a day when Triple H gets sent out to pasture and Bruce Pritchard takes that over too. So we can have this 12-year-old humor down there, because really it's an audience of one that everybody in that company is working for, and we know what kind of humor that goes over.
And that's that. Using that as your measuring stick, Vince McMahon loved this match that that we're discussing right here.
Yes, that's it. Back shaving and the icy hot. Yes. The Uzi Hot, wasn't it? Uzi Hot?
Oh, yes, Uzi Hot. Thank you, David. That's I couldn't remember. I just remembered it was some sort of locker room 14-year-old boy, fart humor, which is Vince McMahon's humor, as we know. But the less said about that match, I guess, probably the better, because most of my notes are on the main event, one that I was primed to hate, didn't hate nearly as bad as I thought I would. But first, let's just maybe answer the question, Doug, for the folks out there who might not hear all of this and just want to know, did we witness tonight the greatest wrestling match of all time?
As I texted you about halfway through this match, what we witnessed was a wrestling greatest hits match. The only thing that could have made this, it was definitely not Okada versus Omega. Definitely not that. But we did see just about every old school reference that we could get. We saw multiple uses of multiple finishers from the greats throughout WWE history. And the short version of the answer, of course, is no. This was not this was not a 7-star match.
And no one ever thought it was going to be, because why in the world would you spend? We thought we were being trolled. The company that doesn't want to use the word wrestling,
exactly,
use the word sports entertainer, suddenly starts talking about the greatest wrestling match ever. And that's the way they've promoted this for the last month, which is really unfair to the performers, because both these guys can bring the goods. We know that. But why would you set expectations for a couple of guys who are on the wrong side of 40 and closer to the ends of their careers than to their primes? Edge only having one match and not even an actual wrestling match in 9 years, and then you put the pressure on them to have the greatest wrestling match of all time. So I just was already put off by the promotion of the match. Then right before the contest, they announced that to enhance the match, they're going to be doing audio enhancements and unique camera angles. And I thought, well, great. They've teased us with the greatest wrestling match of all time. And instead what they're going to give us, and that's the trolling, they're instead going to give us cinematic wrestling. I thought we were going to get another Street Profits versus the Viking Raiders.
Right.
Fortunately, what we got was actually in execution an old school wrestling match. So in that regard, I was kind of surprised. I was expecting over the top cinematic, and I get it. WWE is experimenting. So what they did, folks, if you didn't see it, is they piped in an audience, not the audience that was at ringside. There was a louder crowd noise.
Yeah.
They did things like, there was a Madison Square Garden style entrance, with Howard Finkel to give it that classic sound. I was fine for that. I was even fine for Rudy Charles showing up in his old school WWF ref outfit with the bow tie and all that. They did a lot that. And I'll tell you the truth, I don't even mind the piped in audience. That's not necessarily something that hasn't been done in wrestling for decades. Old WWF, old WCW, that typically was done to try to liven up what was a dead crowd. If the tape came back and the crowd was dead, you piped in cheers. It would distract me then. But in this era, when we know that the folks at ringside aren't really fans anyway, and it's a unique situation, to me, as long as I'm seeing bodies at ringside looking like an audience and I'm hearing reactions, that to me is a cinematic presentation that goes beyond, trash monsters or something like that. That's I can actually accept and handle. I didn't, necessarily love it, but it didn't take me out of the match at all. These two, they evoked Eddie Guerrero. They evoked, Flair, Steamboat with the chops. They had an angle slam in there. Christian Edge paid tribute to his partner Christian with one of Christian's moves. They really did pull out the greatest hits. That's probably the best way to put it, is that if you're not going to be able to have the greatest wrestling match of all time, go ahead and quote some of the greatest wrestling matches of all time. Have a very good, solid. I mean, we even saw some color in this, Doug. You talk about throwing it back. WWE doesn't usually allow blading, and I don't know, again, where this was pre-taped, if that was actual blading or some fake blood, but they added some color to the match. So they definitely gave it the feel of an old school 80s, 90s wrestling match. And as you mentioned earlier, we're old school marks ourselves. So I'm sitting here expecting the worst and was surprised. I'm sort of sitting here like having my notes made out in advance to crap all over this, being calling best match of all time. It's not even the best match of the night. And to me, it actually ended up being the best match of the night. Now, I'm not sure it was even the best match of the week in WWE, thanks to what Daniel Bryan and AJ Styles put on Friday night.
Yes.
This was an excellent contest that I didn't like the camera angles that they shot from underneath. That was one of the things they experimented with that looked so over the top fake. You shouldn't be able to see Edge's face when he's upside down in a headlock. That's weird. But the piped in noise, the greatest hits of call outs to other wrestling matches, and actually just having old school technical mat based contests, I liked it.
So the noise, the piped in audience seriously took me out of it. It from the moment of the entrances, it's like, oh, this is so bad. Why? You don't need to do that. You don't just stop. But it had already been done, and clearly from the Street Profits and the Viking Raiders that we got before that, it was clear to me that WWE was going all in with this greatest match thing that they were going to do. So, and then I was wondering before the entrances, okay, what exactly is enhanced audio and unique camera angles? Well, enhanced audio is the piped in audience. And
I was afraid it was going to be a lot of that, and that really was almost the extent of it, other than those camera angles from underneath.
And those camera angles are something else that really took me out, because when the cameraman is in the ring, he's up. There has to be a camera up underneath. Orton and Edge, when Edge is in the headlock, looking down at the camera, or a camera guy's in where both guys are down and the camera's running around doing like really shaky documentary style. Oh wait, what is this? What's Dave saying here?
Yeah, I was going to let you finish your point before I called it. I know that Edge was definitely selling. Now, I don't know if he was just really good at selling or if he really got hurt. I didn't see a spot where it appeared that Edge tore his tricep, but it was a very lengthy match.
It was a very long match.
I didn't see what the official time was, Doug. I don't know if you know, but I would guesstimate somewhere in the 35-minute range, probably 35, 40 minutes.
Well, a lot of these matches have in my notes. I have this one's gone on too long, and my last note on this match was this has gone on too long too because it was a long match. I mean, I agree.
I gotta disagree with you on this one. This one
I
had
agree.
me.
These are two old school wrestling vets. Even though Edge hasn't really been in, I guess, a proper wrestling match in what 9, 10 years now. But he's still brilliant. He's still they're both doing what they do best. But so much of the cinematics that really, unfortunately, I think I don't want to say they're necessary, but it's good. It is good to experiment with what works and what didn't work. For me, this did not work. If they would have left out the piped in sound, left the audience as they were, let the camera guys stay outside the ring, stay away from the cinematics. You had more than enough cinematics in the tag team ridiculousness that came right before it. This could have been much, much better, but there's just too many other elements that just took me out of it.
I think that if we get the cameraman out of the ring, this is to me the right balance of cinematics that I can accept. I'm tired of seeing matches in bars and buildings and airplane hangars and bus stations and the back of a sanitation truck or whatever you want. Have it in the ring, enhance it. But what they didn't try to snow us. They said up front, and to me, at least, like the fact you're going to use enhanced audio and you tell me you're going to use enhanced audio makes me feel less like you're working me than when you script your audience to start chanting, "This is awesome," or "Fight forever," like you noted earlier. So we might disagree on this a little bit, but and there are a couple elements that didn't work for me. But overall, I thought, okay, they're experimenting to see what works because they may have to be doing this kind of thing for a while. If we stop with the crazy vignettes and can settle on some enhanced, production angles of actual matches, which this came across like an actual match, I would be fine with. And if in fact Edge tore his tricep in just his second match back, that would be a shame because to go as long as he did, if that injury happened early, then kudos for him for working a match of this length.
Yeah.
If it happened late, still kudos for him for finishing the match and coming out of it with both guys looking as strong as they did in this contest. Edge showed that the layoff did not put any rust on him. There's still a wrestler in there that can main event a pay-per-view and carry that role. And it would be a shame if he would go down this early. But greatest match of all time, no. But in fact, we Doug and I talked about it. That is an excellent topic for a future one of these. So I want everyone watching to start thinking of some of your favorite matches of all time. Here in a couple of weeks, we're going to do once we're done reviewing or previewing pay-per-views, which is what we've done for a while now because of the pay-per-view schedule. We're going to get into the topic of the greatest matches of all time, in our opinion.
Yes.
Obviously that's subjective, but we want to hear what you guys think. Maybe you might pick this Edge versus Orton match. Obviously, Doug and I have some differing opinions on it, even though we both agree probably not the greatest match of all time, but a satisfying way to end what was a up and down pay-per-view. For me, the NXT brand is such a favorite of mine, and the expectations are so high. Last week, I know I came on and was somewhat disappointed, and poor Doug got put to sleep. NXT.
Again, not because of the in-ring talent, but because of the tremendous work week I had last week. But I still think that pay-per-view was for an NXT takeover. I have a very high bar for NXT, and
the bar is high for that.
I hear it last week. Even what I saw it the first time around, my well rested rewatch. I still have the same opinion, but
it was definitely lackluster for NXT pay-per-view, which is why I couldn't really recommend anything other than the main event of that one. For this one, my expectations were lower, and maybe that's why, to me, hit in some areas, missed in others. This is one that if you go back and review, folks, I would suggest pulling out a couple of the highlights that we mentioned. There's definitely, it's all over the map, and you can't recommend this one with a complete thumbs up, and it can't be a complete thumbs down either, because it had a little bit of everything. And as you see from Doug and I having some disagreements just on the main event itself, even the main event contained multitudes of things that you can either agree with or disagree with. So it never bored me. This pay-per-view, whether you were like, what are they doing? Or, okay, that was really cool. Outside of maybe, honestly, that awful vignette, and even that you can't get bored with because it was just so bad you were watching it. Probably the worst thing, just match-wise, would probably be Asuka Nia Jax, in my opinion. But there's a couple of standout matches in this, and that pre-show match that I would definitely recommend checking out.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe you go back and watch that, or if you haven't seen it yet, watch the main event with the sound down. And maybe some of your favorite music on. But if you watch it with the sound down, you are going to miss what I think was one of the gems of the entire night, which is Samoa Joe's commentary. Joe,
I'm glad you said that.
He needs just awarded a championship seat of announcing and just be permanently put on the announce team now, because he enhanced so much of the entire show.
So much of the entire show, but especially that main event. I'm glad you said that, because I skipped it in my notes. I said great commentary, especially Joe, to put it over. Where they were trying to hype it as the greatest wrestling match of all time, and then they go through a history of wrestling's greatest hits. You need some over-the-top, like, exciting you need your JR-like commentary, and they don't really have that guy right now outside of NXT. And Joe was there to enhance that broadcast. And that main event especially had such a sports feel to it because of Joe's commentary. Kudos to Joe. Way to call him out, because that dude, he's doing what Jericho's doing on AEW right now. These guys need to be
absolutely.
It's too bad they can't do double duty. Like, you want to see them in the ring, but at the same time, when they're not able to wrestle or they're not on the show, if they're on commentary, the whole show obviously is elevated.
Yes.
Well, Doug, that's all the notes I got.
That's all the notes I got, brother. And at least this wasn't a 20-minute pay-per-view like we were afraid of.
Folks, we got back to the 3-hour pay-per-views. So thank you for staying up late with us and watching the show. And next week, we're going to get back to our regular schedule of being live at 8 o'clock. Next week, Doug, we're talking about AEW. We're celebrating.
I love me some AEW.
So if you're an AEW fan, we're going to make Doug next week. We're going to talk a little bit about the first year of AEW, the things we like, the things that we think they can still improve on, and the things that we hope to see. So we're going to hold Doug's feet to the fire and make him find some negatives with the AEW product. He's going to have a whole week to think about it.
I may need longer, but I'll try.
Folks, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night. Stay safe. Be nice to each other.